This is Steve Von Till, aka Harvest Man, from Neurot Recordings and Neurosis. You're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we are back with another brand new episode. And on the show this week, we welcome back Mikey Kent, vocalist and guitar player of the band Private Hell. Originally from Raleigh, North Carolina, Mikey found himself at a crossroads after he finished college. His relationship ended, his bands had broken up, so he decided to start over somewhere new. He landed in Richmond, Virginia, and became involved with the scene there, booking shows and starting his band Private Hell, a band that blends elements of 80s hardcore, metal, crust, even incorporating elements from bands like Neurosis, and giving us a unique blend of aggressive music that you should definitely be listening to. Private Hell just released a new EP called To Dust You Shall Return. So we discuss the making of the EP, the themes of mental health, sobriety, and trying to make a positive difference in this world that inform the band's lyrics. We talk about Mikey's background and things going on with him, and a whole lot of other topics. It's a great conversation, and that is coming up shortly. But first, here's how you can support The New Scene. Sign up for The New Scene Patreon. There's 4 tiers of support, a ton of Patreon exclusive benefits, and you'll get access to That's Fair, our Patreon exclusive podcast. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a main channel with full video episodes and a clips channel with clips from select episodes. We have shirts for sale at our store at Death Wish Inc. Pick one up. It's a great way to support the show. And you can follow us on social media at New Scene Pod. Also, don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. The Quicksand Manic Compression Deluxe book is shipping now. That came with one of the variants of the Quicksand 30th anniversary repress of Manic Compression. And you can get the book by itself now. It includes a foreword by Walter Schreifels, never-before-seen photographs, original art, rare concert posters, commentary from a lot of bands you know and love. Definitely pick this up today. Piebald's new single, Still on the Couch, is out now. Head to the Iodine YouTube page to watch the new music video and pre-order their upcoming new LP, Tales for the Rages. There's also a new line of merch to go along with the record. Dead Bars have a new single and video out for their song, You Look Like a Smoker. Head to the Iodine YouTube page to check out the video. And pre-order the new double LP from The Saddest Landscape. It's called Alone with Heaven. I've heard the advance of this, and if you're a fan of screamo, post-hardcore, and similar type bands, you will love this. It was recorded with Steve Albini and Jack Shirley, and has guest appearances from Julian Baker, Jeremy Boehm, and Evan Weiss of Into It Over It. For more information, head to iodinerecordings.com, sign up for the newsletter, and you can follow the label on Instagram at Iodine Recordings. And a thank you to our sponsor for the month of March, Persistent Vision Records. Head to persistentvisionrecords.com for all the latest updates, and you can follow them on Instagram at Persistent Vision Records. Okay, check back in with me after the conversation with Mikey. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot to catch up with. But right now, we are going to speak to Mikey Kent of Private Hell. Enjoy. All right, we've got Mikey Kent back on the show. Mikey, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Keith. I really appreciate you having me back on.
Yes, it's good to have you here. You know, a lot has changed since the last time you were here. What was it, late 2024?
Yeah, last time I was here, I think we were just about to put out a flexi disc, Wake Up Screaming. I think we talked, in like October or something like that. I think it was like a couple days before we were opening a gig for Obituary, which ended up being a really cool gig.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, listen, there's a lot to talk about. I want to talk to you about that. I know that you just had a kid around the last time we talked, and Private Hell just put out Charred Remains of a Dying Star, an excellent new 4-song EP. There's a lot going on. But Mikey, first I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
Today, I'm doing pretty good. I'm sleepy, but I think that's just like a perpetual thing, as being both someone in their 30s, working a 9-to-5, and then also being a parent and trying to have somewhat of a nightlife. I am perpetually sleepy, but I'm doing pretty good otherwise.
How old are you, if you don't mind my asking?
I'm 33. which I consider, like, from my experience, this is like the first time in my life within the last year and a half that I've started to feel things in my body that I had never felt before.
Yeah, it wasn't until I turned 35 that I started feeling things, different things. Like, I don't, sometime when I was 38, 37, somewhere around there, I'll eat ice cream at night, like a few hours before I go to bed, right? Always could do it. Never any problem. One day I ate an ice cream bar, went to sleep, woke up the next day feeling horrible. And I was like, no, it's over.
It's really funny, like the really boring and mundane ways in which you feel yourself aging.
Yeah. But when I was 33, let's see, that was 2015 when I was 33. I had not slowed down at all. I was still working a 9 to 5. I was still drinking a lot. I was still getting high a lot. I was still going out a lot. I was living the life. Do you still go out late? Can you still go out late?
So I will say I'm at this point 4 years sober from alcohol, which helps a lot with being able to, I think that it's helped a lot with my body being able to stay fairly agile nowadays. I go out when I play gigs, pretty much. So whether we're doing like a tour or if we're doing some local shows, I'll do that. I like to try to go out to some shows, but I'm absolutely like, I don't go to like midnight movies the way I used to, certainly, especially having a kid. You just really, when you have a young kid, you're just really scrounging for every little scrap of sleep you can get.
Right. So you're 4 years sober from alcohol. That's awesome. Yeah, I got sober in 2017 from everything. I had to because it was all tied together and it would always just get me in big trouble. When did you get sober? How?
I got sober in early 2022. I will say I still occasionally will like smoke pot, but not as like a lifestyle thing. You kind of mentioned how it's all tied together. I think that's a lot of the times the case with me where I have to, with alcohol especially, it was like all or nothing. And with everything else, it's like really have to have like hard rules for, this is something I do when I am out on the road. Otherwise, I'll be doing it all the time. But anyways, yeah, I got sober in early 2022. I had kind of known for a long time that I had a drinking problem. It was never like this sort of like over dramatic thing you see in movies where it's like, you're blacking out every night and you're belligerent and starting fights. But I was just continuing to make a lot of decisions that could very easily ruin my life in both big ways. I try to be very verbal about this stuff. I was driving drunk a lot. I was being an obnoxious person, but like socially, and just not being a really great person that I really liked at the time. And I think, like many people, the pandemic definitely put the foot on the gas pedal for where I think I was going to end up eventually, which was having to cut completely. And it's interesting. I will say I've never gone into a full recovery process, which I honestly really should. I've kind of been doing what they call in a sober communities white knuckling, where you're basically just getting through every day at a time without kind of going through the smaller details and the kind of the whys of why I do it. But it's definitely something that I'm glad I am, because as a parent now, I couldn't do this shit if I was hungover. I couldn't be present like I would want to, because like I'm the person, I can't just have one. It's always a lot. So yeah, honestly, like, yeah, and drinking and not drinking is really something I've tried to be very vocal about with our band. We have a song on our new EP that's about specifically quitting alcohol. We even had a song on our demo when I was still drinking that was about recognizing that the need for sobriety. And I'm definitely not like I'm not a coach. I'm not like an AA person, but I do enjoy really talking sometimes with people after gigs, because I'll talk on stage about what a song is about, and they often will thank me sometimes about talking about alcohol addiction, because it's something, and I feel like in the underground community you either have the hard partiers or you have the fully straight edge people, the if you're not now you never were kind of people, which I love. I love Youth Crew, I love straight edge, I love Minor Threat. But there's a very different sort of mind state, I think, to being somebody who is not drinking out of necessity.
Yeah, I always like to say I'm straight edge out of necessity.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't claim straight edge because for me, I had to stop because what I was doing would have killed me if I would have continued. So it's not like I claim straight edge and I am straight edge. I had like, this is weird to say. I might still be doing it if I had not reached that point, or maybe I would still like to do it. Like there are times where I would still like to do it, but I know that I shouldn't because my life is just leagues and leagues better than it ever was. So it's a weird, complicated thing for me. So I don't claim straight edge because my situation is different from someone who listens to hardcore and claims straight edge. That's just not my association. But yeah, do you ever feel like you should do some kind of structured recovery? That's what I do. And because I couldn't stop. I could never, ever stop anything for more than a few days or a week without starting up again. And I do 12-step recovery, and that's the only thing that has ever worked to get me to where I am today. So, if people like yourself are just able to stop and pull their lives together, that's great. There's not one solution for everybody. Do you ever feel like you need to do something like that? Do you ever think about it?
I was talking to my mom about this just the other day because she also is a couple of years sober at this point from alcohol. It's honestly something it's been on my to-do list for a long time. I think a lot of the times I get a little scared about being as honest with myself as I would need to about that, really peeling back the layers. And yeah, it's really something I want to do. And honestly, this is kind of feels like a cop-out. I also still occasionally smoking weed and stuff. And I feel like if I was to go really into that kind of process, I would have to cut that out of my life together. And as much as I shouldn't have any vices like that, it's nice to have the occasional thing. But it is something that I've always considered. I will say, although I didn't go through a process, I did read a lot. I did a lot of talking with people in kind of informal ways of people I know who had gone through the processes of 12-step programs, or people from my community who I knew who used to be infamously big partiers, and kind of talking about just basic ideas of the whole, one day at a time kind of philosophy and kind of thinking about it on a deeper level. So although that doesn't take the place of a formal 12-step program, I would say having that sense of community was really important for me to get there, because I wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. Because you feel so alone and you feel like something's wrong with you if you're not interacting with other people who've gone through the same thing.
Yeah, my life when I was getting high and drunk was like, woe is me. I'm so sad. Look at all the horrible things that have happened to me.
Yeah.
I'm like this brooding, addicted guy when I was really probably just a clown. But then you get clean, and then it's like, oh my God, like, am I going to survive? I almost relapsed. I did relapse. Life is still small, still microscope view. Like, oh my God, am I going to get clean? Am I going to stay clean? Can I do this? And then, I'm close to 9 years now. So life is...
Congratulations, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Life has just gotten... My view of life has gotten so expansive. Just like, I'm not even really thinking about drugs anymore. I still dream about them every week.
I dream about drinking all the time.
Yeah, it's just there. It's always going to be there. You just have to treat it. But just my worldview, what I perceive, how I view things, like blown wide open. And yeah, there's like a higher power component to that. But you don't have to be religious. But I've realized that like spiritual hygiene is important too, and that can be meditation. That can be connection with others. There's other things to it.
Yeah, that's definitely something I recognize that honestly I should do. It's not, I wouldn't say a New Year's resolution, but doing sort of more therapeutic process stuff, addressing sobriety is definitely something I've promised myself I would prioritize this year.
Yeah, if you find yourself living unmanageably in whatever way, anger is coming out, resentment's coming out, you feel like you want to drink too much, or maybe other behaviors are popping up that you don't like, then I think it's best to explore something else. But if it's working for you, it's working for you. And like I mentioned before, there's no one size fits all for everybody. So I'm glad you're able to stop. Did you just stop? Was it just like one day to the next, like that's it, I'm done?
I had we were in between houses living at my in-laws' house, and I got absolutely hammered on the clock because I was working from home. And I think I had already gone through one little burst of about 5 months of sobriety, and then we had a kind of a tragedy in the family, so they kind of started drinking again. And then after one more, just really a couple months later, after a really embarrassing getting day drunk, it was basically like, yeah, I could recognize my wife couldn't deal with this shit much more. So I really had to look at, do I want to keep the things I have? Although that was never held over my head, it kind of felt like it was in my heart.
Yeah, no, smart, because I always chose the opposite my whole life. You know, I threw away good relationships, bad relationships, friendships. I was blacked out. I was in debt, getting punched out on the street, getting robbed. Every caricature of every bad thing, basically, that you could imagine, I was doing. And I would still push forward, saying, I'm not quitting. I'm still going to go. So I'm glad I stopped.
Yeah. It like I said, it's always something I've tried to be very vocal about, because nobody else talks about this stuff. I feel like really, outside of either total being straight edge or, being more of a just recreational partier, which is, both are fine. I feel like there's not a lot of talk about the morning after the partying kind of stuff.
Right. You mentioned people will thank you, they'll say that what you say helps them.
Yeah, it's happened a number of times, and it's always really cool because I know when I was, it sounds silly to say, but so I'm a huge fan of the band Metallica, and I'm by no means putting myself on the level of an icon like James Hetfield, but I know when I was quitting drinking or thinking about quitting drinking, I was doing a lot of stuff of like listening to people who I admire who had quit, and hearing anybody that was like in my realm of things I was passionate about talking about it was really important to me. I think listening a lot to like Matt Pike from Sleep and High on Fire was another guy I remember watching a lot of interviews. And I remember just thinking like, I wish other people would talk about this stuff on stage, because a lot of people are, sober I've had to go through the sobriety process, but they don't really talk about it that much. And it's, I've always been a very just hard on my sleeve person. I kind of can't not say how I'm feeling. So obviously I'll end up talking in between songs about what about. One of our songs is called a Magic Medicine Misery off our demo. And it's about sobriety. And I often will dedicate it to anybody who's struggling with alcohol addiction. And, basically to say that there's always hope. You're never too far gone. And I've had a number of times people thank me for that and say it really spoke to them. And I don't, like I said, I'm not a coach. I'm just one person who's gone through their own story. So I'm always down to talk about that kind of stuff, because I'll give anybody a leg up that they need for that kind of thing.
That's great. Yeah, I like to talk about it on this show because a lot of people have told me that it helps them. Someone just left a review for the podcast where they said those sobriety conversations help people. And that's great because, yeah, I wish I would have looked to sober people like you did. I didn't even think about getting sober, or I didn't know anyone that was sober. It wasn't even like a thought. I you know what I would do? I would read about people who died who did the same drugs that I did.
Sure.
Like Chris Farley, John Belushi. I was like reading their memoirs and stuff like that. I was trying. I guess I was searching for something, some answers, some sense of camaraderie or understanding. But listening to sober people talk about how they got sober is a much better idea.
Yeah, I think it's a really a prevailing, internal theme I have, both artistically and just in my life in general, is kind of trying to search for hope even when things feel hopeless. And that, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll talk about the new record, but that is like a really big theme of it, and it's a big theme of my life of just even when things seem darkest, like trying to find ways to finding hope, and hearing other people's stories was very empowering, hopeful, because hearing people who were having, everybody's story is different. People having a way more dramatic experience with their alcohol journeys than mine, and hearing that they too were able to take their steps to finding a long-time plan for survival.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about the new EP To Dust You Shall Return. When did we start working on it?
So we started working on it almost like immediately after we put out the last Flexi disc. This was really, I know everybody says this every release they have, but I'm just like so adamant that it is by far the best thing we've ever done. It's the first. I really liked our last Flexi too, but this 7-inch is really like the first thing I've ever put out that I'm truly proud of, because I'm my own worst critic. And we had started working, like I said, immediately after the Flexi. We're on that Flexi disc, the Wake Up Screaming single. I think we had started to nail not a formula, but what the recipe for what our influences really are. Because a huge part of our band, and it wasn't really intentional when we started out this way, but we just have a lot of different influences that we incorporate into our sound. You know, when we first started the band, we were like, yeah, we want to mix like metal and punk and hardcore. But that's a lot of different elements that could be. That's a lot of different variations of ways you could approach that. And I think with this 7-inch and the single before it, we had kind of started feeling like, oh, okay, we really like this element of like classic Swedish death metal, like Entombed, or we really like crust punk, like Amoebics or His Hero Is Gone. We really like classic 80s hardcore. We really like thrash metal. And I think we really kind of figured out what elements of those we really wanted to pull from. And yeah, like I said, pretty much immediately after we finished those songs, right? All right, let's keep working, because I really think that this collection of songs to me kind of feels like this is like our next plan is doing an LP, and this is like our real like, all right, this is who we are and this is what we want to be. And the first song we wrote is the first song on there. It's called Future Void. And lyrically, I wrote it at the end of November of 2024, because that's when my dad died in a very unexpected fashion. And I started writing lyrics from it.
What happened, if you don't mind my
No,
asking?
it's fine. My dad got sepsis. He got an infection and he died.
Oh.
It was awful. And I'm still a year and a half later in the grieving process. And there's a lot of that on this record.
Those unexpected, you know, my family dealt with an unexpected death of my brother when he was young, a long time ago. And just those unexpected tragedies, death of a friend, death of a family member are really rough. So my condolences.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, like I said, it's still an everyday kind of thing that you live in. But right when my dad died, I remember being we went to his town where he lives for the funeral and all that. And I remember like I started getting some lyric ideas for it, just about lack of hope and kind of really wallowing in cynicism of wondering why the good die young, and kind of what's the point of it all. And around that same time, I was watching just a lot of different things that were giving me thematic ideas that tied a lot of this together. I rewatched this miniseries called Midnight Mass, which is a really, really great, directed by this guy Mike Flanagan. It's on Netflix. It's a really good kind of Stephen King-esque horror story but it's baked into the Catholic faith. And when my dad died, it really sent me down a real trail of trying to learn more of who my dad was. And my dad was raised Catholic, and there's From Dust You Came and To Dust You Shall Return. And that was really, that was really driven by thinking about my dad. I was also watching, there's the Studio Ghibli movie, The Boy and the Heron, was also a really big influence on some of the themes. And then after that, the songs kind of just started pouring out of us. That first song, Future Void, is definitely really influenced by stuff like musically by like Sepultura. I would say it's the biggest influence. I was definitely listening to a lot of Chaos AD, as well as, you know, all the usual stuff I'm listening to, Nasum and Entombed, and definitely a little bit of Neurosis too is always in the mix. And yeah, after that, we kind of just started going through them. Then we did the next song, which was called Demon in a Bottle, which deep head Marvel Comics fans, I got the title from a 70s Iron Man comic about alcohol addiction. I'm not even that big of an Iron Man fan, but it's an iconic cover. And that song came out. And then, like I said, the big themes is about addressing hope and seeing the world as cynically as you can and kind of wallowing in that. And then the third song, it's called Misanthropic Urge, is kind of like the flip side of that coin. It's the first song of the B-side. And that song was really kind of me about 6 months into the grieving process of trying to find hope, especially, at the same time, kind of looking at the world. You had all the genocide in Palestine going on. You had all of just really terrible things politically happening. It's right after Trump got reelected, and really struggling to find hope and thinking about what the function of hope in one's life, even when things seem totally hopeless. And the idea of using hope basically is just as a survival tool. And because especially when you have a child, or even if you're just a person who believes in political change, the second you give up is the second it's over. So it was about holding on to any idea of hope in order to believe that things could possibly ever change, because sometimes that's all you have is hope. I was also really influenced by The Road by Cormac McCarthy. There's a reoccurring phrase to talk about holding the fire that I reference in that song Misanthropic Urge, and trying to find people that still have that spark in them, even when, by all accounts, things just seem terrible all around.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do, to hold on to hope, especially when you're in the thick of things. But I think it's an important message. It's one I like to get across too, because I think I used to write more just about, hey, everything is bad and that's it. But I like to do more like, hey, everything is bad or was bad, but it doesn't have to be that way. Like as long as we're alive, there's still a chance. And if you're in the thick of really bad situations, you can come out on the other side of them. It is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And another big influence is I'm a big Lord of the Rings J.R.R. Tolkien guy. And Tolkien often talked about this idea, and you see it reflected in the books, in the Peter Jackson films, if you've seen those. This idea called the eucatastrophe, where when things seem like they're absolutely at their darkest, that something can happen that can change the course of fate. You see it all over the Lord of the Rings, and especially in the second and third books.
We're pulling from some of the same influences there. I like that.
Yeah. I'm a huge movie person. I'm a pretty decent reader, not as well as I'd like, but those kind of themes are always seeping in, because I'm not as well written and poetic as I would like, where I can just weave these beautiful threads. I think about a band like Neurosis, where you're like, it's like they're just like speaking to something greater in the universe. And I wish I was like that, but I can speak to the things that influence me. And the whole idea of eucatastrophe. And I don't think things will just magically get better, but I do think that you kind of have to keep fighting, because I feel like it's almost like cliche nowadays to talk about privilege, but there's something very privileged about being able just to give up and cross your arms and say, well, we're screwed, because that's privilege as a person who's alive right now when there's younger people. That's also privilege as a white guy who can kind of has the ability just to like throw up his arms and decide that that's how things are going to stay, as much as it sucks, because it's a life and death situation to a lot of people. And even just the idea of believing that things are capable of getting better, that it's a possibility if you fight for it, can be a radical idea.
It is. I've been criticized for my own beliefs. I've been criticized for speaking up, for speaking the truth. If you read declassified CIA documents to people, they will call you a conspiracy theorist. That's how deep the propaganda runs in this country. I've been criticized for my own beliefs, for speaking up, for speaking out. I've been criticized for trying to help in some cases and speaking about things. But you know what? I'm going to keep doing it because I have to do something. I that privilege you're talking about, I don't want to just say, I give up, I'm going to go back to work and keep sending my money to satanic pedophiles. No, I can't do that. I have to do something, anything, any little thing that I can to try to help.
Yeah, Yep, 100%. That's another one of the things I kind of talk about a lot of before we play that song Misanthropic Urge on stage, is just of keeping the fire and holding it in you, because sometimes that's all you have. And I always always mention this on stage too. It's like, I'm not naive. I know how terrible things are, but it's because I'm a human being and recognizes the humanity of other people who are suffering, or also people who are young. Like, I look at my son, it's like, well, I can't just assume things are going to be terrible now, because I can't accept that reality for my son who I love. That's just not something I can accept. I'll, die screaming and fighting if I have to, even if that's just on a punk record and playing benefit shows, but it's something. And yeah.
If you can change one person's mind, it's all worth it. I used to think, okay, one side of the political spectrum is good, the other side is bad. I guess I have to choose. And, through social media and talking to other people and listening to other viewpoints, I realized that's not it. Like, that you don't have to choose. You can demand more. You can ask for more. I've figured a lot of things out. So if I can do that for somebody else, if I can do that for one other person, then I want to do that, because I think the more people, the more awareness we have, the more everyone realizes what's going on, the more we can change things and not just settle for the way things are.
Yeah, and it's something I've thought about a lot, is just how I'm not naive. I don't think writing a punk song is going to change the world, but it can change a person. I know it's changed me. I know that, getting into Dead Kennedys at age 14 changed who I am as a person forever. Getting into Crass, getting into Born Against, name the band, Propaganda, whatever. Those things foundationally changed who I am. So any small dent that I can make, even if it's the idea of somebody having hope, like you said, if you can speak to one person, that's all I can hope for. And I one thing, this is something that will be expanded a lot on our record, because we're gonna writing our full length now. We're about 2 songs in. I'm just like really fed up with the degree of apoliticism in punk and hardcore nowadays. It's I was so inspired by so many political bands, and that's something I've been really wanting to speak up to more, even if it's just like small ideas. I mean, I think about a band like Fugazi, who are like deeply political, but it's not like they were like speaking about Bill Clinton's economic policies. Like, it doesn't have to be that, but you can also do a little more than just saying war is bad, which I think is a lot of what the only political stuff you get, which, yes, war is bad, but you can inspire a little more thought than that. It is what it is. And then the last song then on our 7-inch, that's probably the most political one actually on the record, is Charred Remains of a Dying Star.
That was my favorite one. I liked that. What was that? Like a kind of a violin thing at the end there?
Yeah, we had this fellow named J.K. Jonathan. He's like the local sound guy extraordinaire in Richmond, but he also has played in a lot of bands. Most notably, he plays keyboards in the fantastic doom metal band Cough from Richmond, who are just a phenomenal band. He played the violin on that because he's just like a jack of all trades. And I was definitely like trying to think about just something to give it a little more oomph, a little kind of a sense of melody and sorrow to it. And that song that's the only one I've written that's like really specifically about one thing. And it's about just the last year and a half of the encroachment of artificial intelligence and how scary it is on a daily basis. It was there's a lot of references to that one. That one's loaded with references to Dune by Frank Herbert. There's this idea of it's called the Butlerian Jihad in Dune, in which the society starts fighting back against what's called the thinking machines, because when people start relying so much on these machines that do all our thinking for us, then we lose what makes us human. And I mean, it's pretty obvious how much we are risking losing humanity when we're giving artistic output, creative output, our labor to billionaires and tech bros who don't give a fuck about us.
And our thought. Have you talked to younger people who let Chat GPT think for them and reply for them? That is
yeah, I've had to talk my mom out of doing it too and stuff. I've had to lovingly rant at at families, a couple family members about how unhuman. And I'm not religious, but my mom is very religious, and I come from a religious family. And I was just like, this is like, you would talk about satanic. Like, this is like anti-human and anti-creation of what they perceive as being their God. It's pretty terrible and pretty scary. The last just 2 years of where we've gone.
Yeah, that's one thing. And I realize it might be, I have a bad feeling about it, so I don't know. I realize it might be older guy commenting on younger things. You know, I'm sure our parents hated the internet and Google and all that stuff. But letting a machine think for you, like, oh, I have to reply to my friend. Let me type in what I think Chat GPT should say and then send that to this person. Like that does not sound good to me.
I talked to a lot of people who are educators in like college level stuff, and just the impact it's had on people's ability to think is pretty devastating. And I mean, I hate saying things like as a parent, but as a parent, it's really scary thinking about how much people's ability to think and process and read and write is going to be impacted by this. And that's another one of those things where I realize in a way it's like a Pandora's box kind of thing where you can't put it back in now that it's been let loose. But I'm not going to not say that I think it's absolutely terrible and going to lead to the downfall of humanity, because I truly believe that.
It certainly could, more than
maybe
anything
I've watched
else,
Terminator too many times, but
yeah, I think more than anything, AI has the potential to really do some destruction, for sure.
Yeah, and even, you know, kind of like I was talking about, like in Dune, like it doesn't even necessarily have to be like robots taking over the world and nukes, you know, being taken over by weapon systems, but it's that slow death, that death by 1,000 cuts of people just totally losing their humanity.
Yeah, slowly giving everything away to it over time until you become completely dependent on it. That I could see.
Yeah, and that's which also, you know, it kind of works into the themes of hope, and that song's definitely like a little more angry about the world rather than reflective. But yeah, that's the 4 songs. We already have a couple more in the bag, and I'm really proud of them. We recorded with the same guy that we did our last Flexi with, Sam Dyerly. He plays in a lot of great hardcore bands like Brace War and Naysayer, Earth to Heaven. And it was mastered by Arthur Rizk, which was really cool. He's kind of a, you know, musicians, you know, he's one of the biggest heavy music producers nowadays, you know, does everything from Power Trip to biggest metal bands in the world and stuff. So it's cool having him touch it up. And yeah, we had the violin stuff. This is our last work also with our original bassist, who also sings some on it. And he's kind of moving on to just kind of doesn't have it in him to be as actively playing music. And I think he's going to move soon, which is totally cool. We played our record release show just like 3 weeks ago, and it was like our last show with him, which was like a nice farewell. And that's kind of where we're at. We also, at the same time we recorded that, we recorded a cover of a song by a kind of obscure punk band called the Screamers. Like a deep old school punk people definitely know the Screamers, but they're a classic band that I always say that it's the best punk song that was never released or recorded. You can only find like live recordings of this song called 22 Hours of Fear by the band Screamers, where it's like that band doesn't even have guitars. They just have I think they had just keyboards and I think bass guitar and drums. And we did like a whole rework where we just totally changed the style of it, kind of made it like a mixture of like Black Sabbath and Poison Idea or something. We released that around Halloween, but we recorded that in the same sessions as well.
Are you still working with Persistent Vision at all?
You know, we have not recently. I've kind of been nudging up Paul a little bit. I think the big thing with this release, I bet he probably would have worked with us on this, but honestly, the 7-inch format is just a tough hang for labels a lot right now. We decided to self-release this one ourselves. We had enough money saved away from all our gigs to where we didn't have to dig in our own pockets at all, which was nice. And but yeah, with 7 inches, if you don't want to charge $15, $20 for them, which is I couldn't bring myself to do that, to charge that much for a 7-inch in order to have like a reasonable profit margins. We're almost selling these things at cost at $10. And so I think that there's a little hesitance from that. I think he also just put out a ton of stuff. But I think we've talked to him about maybe helping us with some distribution, and I'm sure we'll work with him. I remember I talked with him some about helping us with distribution when we this past year we played a gig with a Deadguy on Page.99 that I booked, and we were talking some about maybe doing some distro stuff with him.
Nice. Where was that show?
That was I booked that in Richmond. It's funny, actually. I listened to your recent Page.99 in-person interview you did, and they talked about a show where Blake, where they didn't have two members of the band weren't there. That was actually that show where two of them, one of them last minute couldn't come due to illness. But I honestly, that's probably the most proud I've ever been of any show I've booked. I've been booking shows since I was 14, and I got to book a couple really fun shows in 2025. Some of the biggest shows. That was by far the coolest show I've ever booked. It was them and Page.99 and my buddy's friend Pretty Baby and this great band called Jealous God. And it was at this venue that's called a Studio 23. It's not even really a venue. It's a art space that has like this big auditorium room. It basically looks like a cafeteria and or like a gymnasium or something. And we were going to have it at a different venue at the Warehouse, which is this beloved Richmond warehouse venue, DIY venue here. They ended up getting in trouble 2 weeks before the show with the authorities due to somebody telling on them. But so we were scrambling to find venues, and I was panicking because, if you book shows, you can't just move a show like that last minute, especially because we were doing like pre-sales and stuff. That's a lot. And thank God that Studio 23 saved us, and we rented a stage. We brought our own PA, and Deadguy was absolutely incredible. That was really inspiring playing with them and booking them, because they're a band that's, as been around since the early 90s. And I really love the guitarist, previous band Rorschach, a lot. It was really inspiring playing with them. It's also inspiring that they're guys in their probably late 40s who love playing punk and metal music still, because that's so inspiring, because you meet so many people who are so jaded. I also love the fact that they, I won't get too much into inside baseball stuff, but I didn't have to deal with a booking agent. I didn't have to worry about complex guarantees and contracts. I can't say enough about how real they were to work with. And then Mike from Page.99 is a friend, and we've played with Page.99 a number of times at this point, which has been a real pleasure. I've told Mike this many times, but as somebody who grew up listening to Page.99, it's a real honor to not only be his friend, but to have shared the stage with him at this point like 4 times. And we ended up having this big open hall room. I remember talking to all the guys at Page.99 at Deadguy. They're like, this feels like the More Than Music Fest from the 90s. So you see all those old hardcore shows that are in DAV halls or whatever, or all sorts of like veteran halls, or just like rented rec centers. And it had that kind of vibe where it was just like a crappy stage thrown up in a PA, and there's young people there who love, Page.99, but then there's a lot of people who are, scene veterans, a lot of people who I really admire were there. And that's where I talked to Paul some about that. If people are interested, you can actually find all the videos of all that show on YouTube. If you just search like a Deadguy, Richmond, Virginia. That was absolutely, other than recording and releasing the record, that was my musical highlight of 2025, was putting together that show and getting to play it too.
Yeah, what a great show. And Page.99 are such great people. I met most of them
really are.
When we did that in-person filming thing. And wow, Mike is just such a great person. I met him because I had him on my show, and I actually didn't listen to Page.99 back in the day because I just wasn't on to all the good screamo music at the time. Some of it, like I listened to Sleepy Time Trio and a couple things, but I'm mostly into it now. Like I've gotten into all of it now. And Mike and the rest of Page.99, Blake, I wish we would have filmed this for the episode. Blake he really liked the jacket I was wearing. So we were talking about like designer clothes and jackets, and he was showing me some stuff, and then we were like looking up other jackets from this company on his phone. And I wish we would have put that in the episode. It would have been funny.
They're an incredible cast of characters too, just because there's 9 of them, first of all, which is crazy, but also the fact that they're all people who grew up together. And I bet probably in the 90s, they probably all had a similar sort of look. But as they've all grown into grown men, they've all taken their different paths in life. So you have some of them that look like total dads, but then you have other ones that have like a hippie look and other ones who just kind of look like, older punks and stuff. There's just all these very different, there's a lot of diversity visually when you look at them on the stage. And there's a lot of cool, different personalities in that band. That's very cool. And it's, at this point, now that I've played with them a number of times, it's been really cool getting to know different people in the band. Mike is my guy though in the band though. We've been buddies for quite a long time. We actually first met through one of my old horror film podcasts is how we met, not even through music necessarily.
How did you get started booking in Richmond? That's good currency these days because booking is impossible.
Well, like I said, I've been booking shows in some capacity since I was like a kid. Just because, I was this eager kid of like, I want to bring bands to Greensboro, North Carolina, and there's not many good bands that come there. There were some. There was absolutely some, but not as many as there should be. Even though when I was booking those shows when I was a teenager, they were pretty low attended because I was 15 and didn't know what I was doing. But I think in Richmond, I've been actively booking shows for a few years now, probably like 3.5, like post-COVID. So yeah, like 2022, I think early 2022 is when I really started booking shows in earnest here in Richmond. I do it under this name called Crystal Plumage Productions, which for the horror movie fans, it's a Dario Argento film, Bird with the Crystal Plumage. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, and I think a lot of bookers will cop to this too. I want to play with cool bands. That's definitely a part of it. Private Hell are a band that don't fit neatly into genre boxes. Like I said, we have a lot of different influences. So sometimes in a city like Richmond, where there's a lot of great bands, we aren't the first band that would get picked for the D-Beat show or the death metal show. So sometimes I'm like, well, if I want us to play a show, I'll just do it myself. I believe firmly in DIY. And I don't only book shows that I play, but that's definitely it was an initial motivating factor because I just also have friends in bands that want to help them. And it's something that's really, really beautiful. It's really stressful. I have a lot of anxiety and stuff, and it definitely doesn't help, especially with anybody who's booked a show knows just the factors of getting bands to respond, getting venues to respond. On the internet can be a real pain, but anytime I book a show and it's successful, it's the best feeling in the world. And really within this last year, since early January of last year, is when I've started taking it a little more seriously, where I do about one show a month, more or less. But I also set a rule for myself was I only book shows that I really, really want to book. Because if I'm doing something because someone's twisting my arm, I'm not going to do it well and I'm not going to have fun. And then I'm just never going to want to book shows again. Because I've done that a couple times. I won't name names, but I had an experience in 2025 of booking like a pretty popular band and getting pushed around a lot by booking agents and stuff. And that kind of stuff, which, if people want to have booking agents, that's fine. But there's a degree to where I'm like, I don't mean to be that guy, but I'm like, is this really what punk is?
Yeah. I deal with a lot of people in this business. If there was someone unpleasant, a booking agent, a manager, a band, I just wouldn't deal with them. I don't care enough to deal with that. I'm only going to work with cool people. That's it.
Yeah, and I look at people like I was talking about, like my experiences with Deadguy or my experiences with Page.99. I just shoot him a text like, "Hey, dude, you want to play a show with Deadguy?" He's like, "Yeah, let's do it." I was like, "Cool. How much money do you need to get?" And I was like, "This number." And I was like, "No problem. We're good." And maybe it's naive and that's punk to me. I mean, and I'll book some shows with booking agents as long as they talk to me like a person. And a lot of the times, some of the booking agents are involved from a punk background. Like I've dealt with like Ron from Crawl Space Booking, who's very much comes from old school punk background. I'm not opposed to that kind of stuff, but I'm not going to get stiff armed into stuff anymore. But also a big thing is I also like to book a lot of benefit shows, and that I got to do several last year that were really, really powerful experiences. I booked one that was really cool for victims of the fires that were in LA last year. I got Enforced, who are like this very popular thrash metal band that are from Richmond, but also just a popular band on Century Media. we did that one with, donated, more than $1,000 to that. I did the Dark Days, Bright Nights pre-show this year, which was really cool too, which I coordinated a lot with Paul on that one, with Inner Arma and Black Tusk. And that all that money went towards this organization called Heal Palestine, which is specifically an organization that benefits children who are impacted by the genocide. Whether it's things like helping them file paperwork to get them out of a war zone, or to help pay for surgeries or get children new limbs, or all sorts of things like that, or just like quality of life services. And I've done that, and after doing those 2 gigs, that's something I do as a booker want to place way more emphasis on, is punk and hardcore as a vessel for change and for helping people. Because like I said, when you do a lot of stuff with like booking agents and guarantees, which is fine, I'm not going to not book somebody. I'm booking a great show for this band Ingrown that I'm really excited about, that I've had a positive experience with their booking agent. But sorry, I know I keep clarifying that. But I also believe in DIY punk and hardcore metal being a thing that can help people. Because like I said, if you can help one person, that's great. But if you can donate a couple $1,000s to an organization of people in need, that's great too. We just played a really great benefit show a couple nights ago, actually. That was really, really cool. It's probably the wildest show we've ever played in terms of a crowd interaction. That was a benefit for the Richmond Community Legal Fund, which goes towards people who have been impacted by all the things with ICE and law services and all other sorts of things, people impacted by that. And that's become a real priority to me for the band in the next year, is how we can do that and help other people.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, see, you're doing a lot. It sounds like you're doing a lot, both in your messaging with your own band, but also being involved in booking these shows and booking benefit shows and giving to organizations that are making a difference. I think that's great.
Yep. I do my small thing that I can, because even if it's just a couple $1,000s, that makes a change. And yeah, like I said, like punk has totally changed the way I see the world. It's not the only form of political ideology that I've received, but it is the spark that's given me so much. I mean, I'll never be able to underplay the amount that listening to Tragedy or Crass or Chumbawamba or whatever have really instilled in me. And I think that's something that needs to still be a big thing in punk and hardcore that I don't see as much. I'm not saying there's not politics in hardcore anymore, but it's something that's really distressed me about the lack of that. It feels more and more like, especially hardcore, feels like it's become almost just like a form of dance music nowadays. And I have nothing against slam dancing. I think it's really awesome in moshing and stage diving. But if that's the beginning and end of what we're doing here, then there's nothing subcultural about it. It's just dance music. It's just, just a way for people to mosh. And that's cool, but that's not quite enough. I mean, I even think about, even in the 90s, bands that were thought of as like jock tough guy bands, who I enjoy, like Earth Crisis, like even then they were really into caring about veganism. And you don't see like the big tougher hardcore bands even caring about that nowadays. Now it's just like strictly apolitical for so much hardcore. So that's something that I've really tried to put more emphasis on in my life, even if that makes me feel like an old guy sometimes.
Yeah, I can count the number of bands on one hand whose beliefs align with mine, who would be considered really far left bands who really talk about things that are going on in a real way. I can think of 1, 2, maybe 3 bands. I'm sure there's more out there, but you know what? I appreciate those bands, because if you take that stance, if you really talk about what's going on, it's going to negatively impact you in some way because of the way things work in this country.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times where people are like, oh, like we all agree on the same thing, so why even bother talking about it? I think that's kind of bullshit. And I think that's a real foregone conclusion, especially if it's not talked about. Because, I'm sure you remember, back when I was getting into hardcore, you would go to shows and there's a zine table. You have the crime think table where you learn about all sorts of things. And that's not a thing people do anymore. And just assuming everybody is a leftist like me is a setting one up for disappointment, because I think that's one of the reasons we got where we are nowadays, is a lot of assuming that we agree on things that we actually don't. And I remember I was talking to this guy Mark recently, who's older head in Richmond. He used to play in bands like Limp Wrist and stuff. And he was said to me that he really appreciates that I talk about politics on stage. And I told him, like, I wish I was like Martine from Los Crudos and that I could just say these beautiful, elegant political things. And I can't, but I can say what's on my heart. And I think more people should do that. But people shouldn't have to talk about politics if they don't want to, but they shouldn't be afraid to or think that they shouldn't.
Exactly. I'm like you. I don't think I'm a brilliant, eloquent speaker who can change the minds of thousands of people, but I will speak from the heart, and I will continue to do it no matter what happens because I have to.
Yeah. I mean, I think about some bands I've seen that really changes my life, what they'll say between songs. You know, I see you have like a Paint It Black on your poster back there. I remember seeing like Dan Yemen say shit that just really inspired me. And, you know, things I wouldn't have thought about if he hadn't have said it. So just try to be the change you want to see. And like I said, people don't have to be political, but I think if punk wants to continue to matter and hardcore to matter and be a part of his subculture for a better world, then you got to do what you can.
Right. I like the idea of calling it dance music because at first I thought like EDM, but no, it's like dance music because people are hardcore dancing to it. That's funny.
I will give full credit. That was in a podcast that turned out a punk podcast with this guy Woj from the band Cold World. Was talking about that. If like that feels like that's what in the worst ways hardcore has become in many ways. And again, I'm not the old guy saying it's not like it used to be. You know, hardcore sucks now. I love hardcore and punk, and that's why I keep doing it, is because I believe in it. But I also believe that we can expect more from ourselves as a community.
Absolutely. Let's talk about what you've got coming up. You mentioned that you have a podcast project. Is there something new you're working on?
Sure. Yeah, I got a couple little things I can plug. I do a podcast called Years of Fear. You can get it wherever you listen to podcasts. It is something I've been working on for a long time. This is if you don't like horror movies, and people can skip forward about 2 minutes. But I'm a big fan of history and film history and just the way that art intermingles with culture and history and politics. And this is a show that it's kind of long form history storytelling of the most important horror films of every year, starting in 1960. There's great horror movies before that, but 1960 you get Psycho, which is the first, in my thesis statement of, is the first modern horror film. And then from there, every episode is about the most important horror film and how it interacts with the world of what was happening at the time, how it impacts the genre. I've only done 4 episodes so far. I'm about to release the 5 because it is very, very research intensive. Basically, every episode's like a documentary. The episodes range from an hour to almost 2 hours of creating a narrative, and it's a lot of writing, it's a lot of editing, a lot of research. I'm about to release the last episode of the first season of the show for 1960 to 1964, which we're doing. The whole run was I did 2 episodes on Psycho. I did one on the film The Pendulum. I did one on Carnival of Souls, one on Blood Feast, and one on Blood and Black Lace, which is a really cool one because it's about Italian horror and how it interacts with fascism, which is pretty fascinating. So I'm doing that. Whenever this comes out, hopefully I will have this last episode out, and then I will hopefully have more out by the next Halloween season. So I got that. That's my big podcast project. If you like hearing me ramble, check that out. I promise it's way more edited to make me sound so eloquent and well-spoken.
That's why I always thank the gods that this show is not live. I stutter a bit and I have a hard time collecting my thoughts and getting a question out straight sometimes, which you may not know out there, everybody listening. But thanks to the magic of editing, I can make myself sound semi-coherent.
Yes, absolutely. I used to do a different horror podcast, so that was more straight interviewing. And that's where I first met like Mike from Page 99. I did a lot of interviews with cool punk and hardcore people. That was really cool doing that. Boy, did I chop those up, all the ums and ahs and hmms. But yeah, so I got that in terms of podcasting. And then I have 2 music projects I'm also working on, both of which are not active bands, but they're more projects. So these will probably be out, at least one of these will be out around then. I have one that I'm really excited about that is actually doing a release of my first band called we're called the Fuss, or FUSS. I think there's other bands of that name now, but there wasn't in 2007. But it was my band I was in high school, and I will say I'm biased, but I think we were bad for our first couple years, but we became a really good band at the end. And like many bands, we broke up right when we started getting good. But we recorded an EP right before we broke up, but we never really released it. And I think, just because I'm getting a little older, getting maybe a little navel gazing and nostalgic. I've gone back and I've got those recordings mastered. I'm getting artwork made. I'm going to have it actually formally released just on Bandcamp and stuff and streaming. Really excited about that because these are songs that I'm honestly really proud of. And I always had an inner sadness that I never got to give them the love they deserve. We might play a show. We've thrown around the idea that, getting all the four of us back together might be hard, but we'll see. So I got that coming. So you can follow me on that Mikey Kent on Instagram if you want to keep up with that, because we're not going to do any social media. And then I have another actual music project I'm doing now that I'm really proud of, where this will almost definitely be out by late March. It's called The Trojan War. It's musically, the style I would say is kind of in the realm of like oi punk, in the sense that it's very big, catchy, melodic, major key, kind of poppy punk, but also with a lot of aggression, especially like in the vocals. It's really influenced by like classic bands of that genre, like Blitz and Cocksparrer, as well as like 90s bands too that aren't necessarily that, like Leatherface is a big influence, or even like early Rancid and stuff like that. That's a project in which I doing with a friend where so I mentioned that my dad died, and this whole project is basically my grief project. It started out as demos that I was just kind of messing around with at home, and then I was like, I really like this. I should get a real drummer so I had my buddy Hash play on it, and my buddy Jesse. And my dad went to University of Southern California, the Trojans, and it was a big part of my dad was the Trojans. So it was called the Trojan War, and all the songs are about my dad, but also about my family history. Our immigration story from Ireland is a theme in there. And it's kind of, it's been very fun because Private Hell has become increasingly extreme musically, in terms of more influences from Napalm Death and Entombed and Extreme Noise Terror have crept in on the recent stuff that becomes increasingly outside of the pop song structure. So it's been very fun with this to do the opposite end of the punk music and have something that's all choruses and hooks. I actually just today made the Bandcamp. So if you want to check this out, this is almost definitely out by then. The Trojan War VA.bandcamp.com. I'm really proud of these songs. I've actually never done this specific style, but as somebody who's been a fan of that stuff for a long time, it was a really powerful and healing experience. I'm still, like I said earlier, dealing with the loss of my dad on a daily basis, but having this creative outlet for it was very impactful for me. And I'm already working on a new batch of songs with a couple other possible band members that I can't share on here because it's not official yet, but I'm pretty excited. So that's what I've got going on. Like I said, I stay busy, and then I also try to go to shows occasionally and try to be a good dad.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, how are you balancing life with the family and the young child? I mean, it's great. It gives me hope, because in my mind, I'm like, oh, if you have a family, you have to give up everything that you like doing. But no, clearly not, because look at everything you're doing.
I'm doing my best. And I will say, I'm sure my wife wishes I didn't have so many projects, but I also spend a lot of time, almost every free moment I have is spent trying to be with my son, because I love him and I love being with him. But it's a battle. It's a real look in the mirror of what your priorities are. So I don't get to read nearly as much as I used to. I don't get to go out and socialize as much unless I'm having like friends come over. My band practices are usually where I get to hang out with friends. I do one band practice a week. It's a lot of staying up late and getting sleep where you can. But also I reject the idea that just because you're married and you have a kid, or because you're over the age of 30 that you have to stop doing the things you care about, including things like punk rock. No, I don't. I've missed a lot of great shows, and I wish there's a lot of shows where like, man, I really wish I could have gone out to that one. But also, I also got to be a good dad, and that includes just being present as much as I can. It's a battle, but it's something that I do my best to. And like I was talking about with sobriety, when my wife got pregnant, I started talking to a lot of people in my community who had children, both older, people who are like more in their 40s and 50s, who are like kind of what I consider like elder punks. People like Chris Sports Larson, the legendary photographer. She's somebody who I talked to a lot about parenting and stuff early on. And she told me, like, really, when you have a kid, they're entering your world, and you can find ways to make the two things line up. Like I said, you can't go to every show, you can't do everything, but if you balance your priorities, it is something that can be done. Don't give up, people, just because you're not 25 and, doing whatever you want, sleeping on the floor.
Yeah, I'm 44 and I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to slow down, and it sounds like you aren't either. It gives me hope.
Yep. I do my best. And like I said, you doing it at 44 is a beautiful thing to me because, like I said, I believe in all ages, and that includes older people who are not in their 20s or 30s even.
Well, Mikey, thank you for coming back on the show. Everyone, make sure you check out To Dust You Shall Return. That's the new EP from Private Hell. Great band. You're not going to go wrong with any release, but the new EP is excellent as well. I'm looking forward to more from you, Mikey, and thank you again for coming back on the show.
Thanks, Keith. I really do appreciate it, and thanks for the kind words. Like I said, I'm really proud of this 7-inch. It's easily my favorite thing I've ever done musically, so I hope people enjoy it too.
And there you have it, Mikey Kent. Excellent conversation. Glad to have Mikey back on the show, and awesome to get more of his story. I'm happy that he was able to stop drinking. I'm happy that he's been able to improve his life, and I'm really happy that he is able to find comfort in the arts. I was really sad to hear about the passing of his dad, but Mikey is getting through it. But it sounds like music and art is giving Mikey a great outlet to process those feelings of grief and a lot of other things. And make sure you check out the new EP from Private Hell. I love it. You really can't go wrong with anything in their discography, but a great band. Looks like Mikey's got a lot of other things coming up, which is cool. And that's a good lesson in here, that even though you get married and have a kid, your life does not have to end. He's still finding the time to do the things he loves while also being there for his family. And that's it. It's all about balance. So great conversation. And thank you so much, Mikey, for coming back on the show. So let's check in. How are we doing? Things are good. They have been incredibly busy here. Throughout this month, Memory Entry has been in the studio recording our debut LP, and it has been very difficult because it is super long days, 10+ hour days of getting everything tracked. We're done with most of the drums and the guitars now, but there's a long way to go and not a lot of time. So we are really pushing ourselves to the absolute limit of physical and mental human comprehension to band together and get through these songs and get through everything and find the time to do so as well. But the LP is sounding amazing so far, and I'm really excited for it to come out. I think there's going to be some things that people don't expect, and I think it is going to be a huge step forward for this band. And it is also the first full-length LP I've ever recorded, so that angle of it is very exciting too. Usually I'm in a band and we record an EP and then we break up and then it's on to the next one. But I'm glad we've been able to get to this point with Memory Entry because it's everything to me right now. I love it. And beyond that, it was, so there was a lot of work to do to get ready to be in the studio, because when you're in the studio, we're in there for 10+ hours at a time. There's no time to do anything else. So there's a lot of podcast work to do. I have to squeeze in interviews. I have to edit multiple episodes ahead of time to make sure that I have them ready to go, because by the time I get home from the studio, I'm too tired to think or do anything. There's reels to make. There's podcast business to attend to. There is a lot of stuff to do to clear the schedule so you can be in the studio and just focus on making music. Especially this past week. These past 2 weeks have been unbelievably exhausting. I did a ton of podcast work up front to clear out this week to be in the studio. We were in the studio for 30 plus hours, stretched over 3 days. And then right after that, I took a trip out to New Jersey to meet up with Nathaniel so we could record episode 3 of On Location. We hung out with Gwar. We went to see Gwar at Starland Ballroom in New Jersey. So that will be the next episode of the new scene On Location. I don't want to give away too many details because I want you all to see it in the episode, but it was one of the best times I've ever had, but also one of the most tired times because I was running on no sleep. I got up at 5 in the morning to get ready to go out there, and I didn't get home till 2 a.m. the following morning, so I am spent. But I'm spent doing things that I love, so I'm tired with a big smile on my face. And next week, it's going to be more of the same. Just trying to get ahead of everything, trying to clear up time and more time in the studio to finish tracking this LP. But lately, I've been putting more effort than ever into this podcast, into this platform. Since the loss of my long-term day job, things have changed. My mentality has shifted. A lot of things have shifted, and I'm just putting everything I can into the new scene. The podcast is stronger than ever. There's a lot of things I'm doing in the background that I've put off for a long time. We have On Location now, which has been so much fun to film and put out there. Video content like that is something I've wanted to do for a long time and just have never done it. So it's kind of a miracle that I linked up with Nathaniel Shannon and that he's into this and that we get to make this together now. So I think the big lesson in all of this is face your fears. Whatever things you're afraid of doing, whatever things you feel like you can't do, whatever big things in your life you need to do that you're putting off, address them, attack them, jump in with both feet and handle them. Me losing this job is probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me because more than ever, I feel like I can really make the life that I want and need. I don't need to be tied to a 40-hour-a-week day job that's going to take up all my time and energy. Not that mine was towards the end, but there has been periods where it was. And this whole thing has just taught me that there's different ways of doing things. I've made adjustments in my life that I think are going to enable me to move forward in the direction I've always wanted to. And I'm happy. So let's check in with some feedback from you, the listeners. It has been a minute. Curtis Jeffrey Anderson said this about episode 324 with Walter Schreifels. I just saw Gorilla Biscuits 2 weeks ago. Walter's the man. Yes, Walter is definitely the man. One of the nicest people I've spoken to on this show and in real life, so thumbs up to Walter. Jeffrey Nouveau said this about episode 304 with Don DeVore from Ink and Dagger and Evan Weiss. Devil Children Unite. Yes, indeed. What's up, Jeffrey? How you doing? Ryan Engelhardt said this about episode 320 with Jacob Bannon of Converge. One of the most humble legends you'll ever hear speak. Yes, both times I've had Jake on the show, really great conversation, so always a pleasure to speak to Jake. Andrew Pork Owens said this about episode 323 with Jeremy Baum of Touche Amore. Great episode. Indeed it was. Thank you for listening, Andrew. Thanks to everybody who's commenting, liking, subscribing, all of that stuff. Please continue to do that. That helps us. We're still on the push to 400 Apple Podcast reviews. So if you have not reviewed the show on Apple Podcasts, every iPhone has a podcast app. Open it up, search the new scene, scroll down a bit, and hit the 5-star button. You can do it on your phone. You can do it on other people's phones if you haven't rated it there yet. But all of this stuff greatly helps us. Spotify comments I love. YouTube comments I love. I'll read some of those at the end of the next episode when I check in. Instagram likes, Instagram comments, Spotify reviews, all of that stuff. So thank you, everybody, for the continued support. And also, don't forget about the Patreon. I just posted the latest episode of That's Fair. That's our new Patreon exclusive podcast that features myself and Nathaniel Shannon. We talk about life, we talk about personal stuff, we talk about music, we do music reviews, social commentary, everything. It's a more personal space, but we have guests too. We had Nick Sakes from Dazzling Killmen on the show. So we sat with Nick and figured out, should he quit his job? Should he go out on tour? And guess what? One day after we recorded the episode, he got laid off. So he got his answer right there, and now he can collect unemployment and go out on tour. So problem solved. If you subscribe to the Patreon at tiers 1 through 4, you get access to every episode of That's Fair. If you sign up as a free member, you get access to 2 episodes. And if you don't sign up at all, still go check out the Patreon. You can look at articles, you can look at different posts I made, and everybody has access to the premiere episode of That's Fair. Even if you're not signed up, even if you're not a member, there's something there for everybody, so please go check out the Patreon. I hope everybody out there is doing well. I know a lot of people have lost their jobs. I know there is a lot of unrest in the world, but I hope you can find some sense of peace and stability in all of this. I'm back next week with a new episode and a new guest, and I'll see you then.